he was the last human soldier. And the first galactic hero. The Galactic Union had never encountered anything quite like Specialist Thomas "Tommy" Cooper. To be fair, they had never encountered any humans before him. The remains of Earth's final military outpost, Lunar Base Epsilon, had been discovered purely by accident when a Centauri mining vessel detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the desolate satellite orbiting the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Tommy had been in cryosleep for approximately 247 Earth years when the Centauri awakened him. The rest of the base personnel had succumbed to a catastrophic life support failure centuries earlier. Historical records recovered from the base's damaged systems indicated that Earth had destroyed itself in what humans had melodramatically called the Final War, leaving Tommy Cooper as potentially the last living specimen of his kind. The Centauri, being a practical species with 4 arms, iridescent scales, and an innate curiosity about the universe, immediately recognized the scientific value of such a discovery. They transferred Tommy and what remained of his personal effects to their vessel, and promptly delivered him to the nearest Galactic Union outpost for proper evaluation and study. This was how Tommy Cooper, formerly a mid-level communications specialist with a mediocre service record and a penchant for breaking regulations, found himself standing before the Galactic Union High Council on Centaurus Prime, the administrative heart of the known galaxy. The specimen appears to be in remarkable physical condition, considering the extended cryogenic preservation, announced Dr. Zell Therax, the Union's foremost xenobiologist. The towering, multi-eyed Arcturian adjusted his sensing apparatus as he circled Tommy with undisguised fascination. Preliminary scans indicate minimal cellular degradation and full cognitive function. Tommy, dressed in the gray jumpsuit provided to him after his original uniform had been taken for analysis, scratched his beard and yawned. The council chambers were impressive, a vast amphitheater with floating platforms for each of the 27 representative species, all surrounding a central dais where he now stood. But after 3 days of constant prodding and questioning, he was growing bored. "Yeah, I feel great. Hungry, though. Any chance we could wrap this up and grab some lunch?" Tommy's voice echoed through the chamber, automatically translated by the neural interface the Centauri had fitted him with. The device occasionally struggled with human idioms, but it managed the basic meaning well enough. A ripple of discomfort passed through the assembly. The Vexillians, gaseous entities contained in ornate pressure suits, pulsed with agitation at such informality. The Krith delegation, insectoid diplomats known for their rigid adherence to protocol, clicked their mandibles in disapproval. High Chancellor Omolak of the Phalanx Confederation raised one of her 7 appendages for silence. As leader of the Galactic Union High Council, her word carried unquestioned authority throughout the 27 worlds. Human Cooper, you stand before the assembled wisdom of the galaxy. This is not a venue for discussing sustenance intake schedules, she stated, her tone measured but stern. The universal translator rendered her harmonics into crisp, formal language. We seek to understand your species and determine your status within the Galactic Union. Tommy shrugged. Fair enough. Ask away. But just so you know, I was a communications tech, not an ambassador. I mostly fixed satellite relays and played cards with the engineering crew. The High Chancellor's bioluminescent markings flashed in what Tommy had come to recognize as confusion. Your military designation was specialist. Our understanding of human military structures suggests this indicates expertise. Yeah, I specialized in not getting assigned to combat duty, Tommy said with a lopsided grin. Look, I was no hero. Just a regular guy trying to serve his 3 years and get free college. Then the world ended and I got stuck in a freezer for 2.5 centuries. Talk about bad timing. The council chamber erupted in overlapping translations and confused chatter. The concept of a soldier seeking to avoid combat seemed to violate some fundamental assumption about military service that transcended species, barriers. Professor Zuri Val, the council's historian, leaned forward on her hovering platform. The delicate crystalline being refracted light in complex patterns as she spoke. Human Cooper, Our analysis of your species' historical records indicates that Earth's final conflict involved weapons of tremendous destructive capability. Were you trained in the operation of these weapons? Tommy laughed, a sound that caused several council members to flinch. Lady, sorry, Professor. I couldn't even get the coffee machine to work half the time. The big guns were way above my pay grade. Then what purpose did you serve in your military? Asked General Crux, the heavily armored representative of the Draconian fleet. His species valued martial prowess above all else, and his confusion was evident even through the translator. I kept the communication systems running so the important people could talk to each other, Tommy explained, trying to simplify his role. When I wasn't doing that, I watched movies, played video games, and tried to beat Captain Reynolds at poker. Never managed it, though. Pretty sure she cheated. The council members exchanged glances that transcended species differences, universal expressions of bewilderment. Perhaps, ventured Ambassador Plex of the Quorum of 12, a collective consciousness housed in 12 identical host bodies, the human is being deceptive to protect military secrets. Why would I do that? Tommy asked, genuinely puzzled. Earth is gone. There's no military left to have secrets. It's just me. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the full implications of Tommy's words registered. He was not just a representative of humanity. He might well be its last survivor. The extinction of an intelligent species was considered a galactic tragedy, and the council members seemed to recognize the gravity of the moment. High Chancellor Omolak's voice softened perceptibly. Human Cooper, we understand your situation is unique. The Galactic Union has protocols for integrating refugee species, though we have never encountered a case involving potentially a single individual. We will need time to determine the appropriate course of action. Tommy nodded, suddenly. Feeling the weight of his situation, he was humanity's unwitting ambassador to the stars, a role he was spectacularly unqualified for. So what happens to me now? Dr. Zeltharax stepped forward. I propose the human be assigned to my research division for further study and acclimatization to galactic society. Hold on, Tommy interjected. I'm not keen on being a lab rat. No offense, Doc, but I've had enough prodding for one lifetime. Before the doctor could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. If I may, High Chancellor, I have an alternative suggestion. All eyes turned to Commander Zevra of the Union Exploration Corps. The commander's species, the Lirani, resembled massive felines with 6 limbs and copper-colored fur. They were known throughout the galaxy as exceptional navigators and explorers. The human may possess valuable insights into his species' technology and survival strategies, Commander Zevra continued. The Exploration Corps could benefit from such knowledge while providing the human with purpose and structure similar to his previous military service. Tommy perked up at this. The idea of being on a ship, doing something familiar, appealed to him far more than life as a research subject. I like this cat's thinking, he said, earning a rumbling sound from Zevra that the translator identified as amusement. High Chancellor Omolak considered the proposal. Commander Zevra's suggestion has merit. However, the human must first undergo comprehensive evaluation and training before joining any Union service. Naturally, agreed the commander. My ship, the Stellar Horizon, is scheduled for a mapping expedition to the Cygnus Rift. We could depart after the human completes basic orientation, and so it was decided. Tommy Cooper, the last human soldier, would become the first human to serve in the Galactic Union Exploration Corps, assuming he passed the orientation, which, given Tommy's history with formal evaluations, was far from guaranteed. As the council session adjourned, Tommy found himself escorted to temporary quarters in the diplomatic section of Centaurus Prime. The accommodations were designed for Terran-compatible physiology, though the bed was too firm and the atmospheric settings slightly off. Still, after centuries in cryosleep, Tommy wasn't about to complain about minor discomforts. Orientation begins at first light, informed his escort, a robotic entity designated as Adjutant 7. You will be evaluated on physical capabilities, cognitive functions, and adaptability to Union protocols. Great, Tommy muttered. Sounds like basic training all over again. I barely passed that the first time. The adjutant's ocular sensors flickered. Historical data suggests human military standards were significantly lower than Union requirements. Statistical analysis indicates your chances of successful completion are approximately 12.4%. Tommy grinned. I like those odds better than I expected. I was thinking more like 5%. As the door slid shut behind the departing adjutant, Tommy surveyed his new home. The room contained alien furnishings that approximated human needs, a sanitation chamber with puzzlingly complex fixtures, and a viewport offering a stunning vista of Centaurus Prime's twin moons rising over the spired cityscape. Well, Tommy boy, he said to himself, you always wanted to see the stars, just didn't expect to be the last human doing it. He approached the viewport and placed his hand against the transparent material. Somewhere out there, orbiting a yellow star, was the radioactive ruin of Earth and its lifeless moon, where he had nearly become just another casualty of humanity's final act of collective insanity. For the first time since being awakened, Tommy allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss. Not just his personal connections, family, friends, the world he knew, but the loss of his entire species and all they had created. The last human. The thought was too vast, too terrible to fully comprehend. Not the last, he corrected himself, straightening his shoulders. Just the first human to join the Galactic Union, the first to explore beyond our solar system. It wasn't much comfort, but it was enough to get him through the night before orientation, and Tommy Cooper had always been good at focusing on just getting through the next day. Orientation, as it turned out, was even worse than Tommy had anticipated. It began with a physical assessment that seemed designed for beings with significantly more limbs and greater endurance than the average human. The obstacle must be traversed using all available appendages, instructed drill instructor Gorn, a massive reptilian being with skin like polished obsidian. Standard time for completion is 47 seconds. Tommy stared up at the towering framework of shifting platforms, gravity-defying loops, and what appeared to be electrified barriers. I only have 4 appendages, and 2 of them are pretty much just for standing on. Gorn's vertical pupils narrowed. Excuses are not acceptable, human Cooper. Adaptability is a core requirement for Union service. 3 minutes and several minor electrical burns later, Tommy collapsed at the end of the course, gasping for breath. Instructor Gorn loomed over him, data tablet in hand. Your performance was unexpected, the reptilian admitted. While your time was abysmal, your unorthodox technique for bypassing the gravitational inversion field has been noted as potentially innovative. Tommy, still trying to catch his breath, managed a weak thumbs up. What Gorn called unorthodox technique had simply been Tommy falling through the field headfirst while flailing wildly. Though he wasn't about to correct the instructor's interpretation, the cognitive assessment that followed was equally challenging, though in different ways. Tommy found himself in a simulation chamber, confronted with logic puzzles based on mathematical principles he had never encountered. The standard approach requires calculation of 5-dimensional probability curves, explained the assessment supervisor, a being that appeared to be composed entirely of interconnected light strands. Please proceed. Tommy stared at the holographic display, completely lost. Can I phone a friend? The light being flickered in what might have been confusion. Communication with external entities during assessment is prohibited. It's just an expression, Tommy sighed. Look, I have no idea how to calculate whatever you just said, but I'm guessing the answer has something to do with that pattern repeating in the corner there. The supervisor's luminance intensified. You are perceiving the problem through pattern recognition rather than mathematical analysis. Interesting. Proceed with your method. To Tommy's surprise, his intuitive approach to the puzzles yielded acceptable results. Not exemplary, but sufficient to advance to the next phase of evaluation, adaptability training. This proved to be Tommy's strongest area. When presented with unfamiliar tools, alien cultural protocols, or emergency scenarios, he demonstrated a remarkable ability to improvise workable solutions. even if they rarely aligned with standard Union procedures. Human Cooper, the approved method for neutralizing a cascade failure in a quantum stabilizer, requires precise adjustment of the harmonic frequencies, admonished Technical Officer Pelax after one particularly chaotic simulation. Tommy shrugged. Yeah, but hitting it with the wrench was faster. Your solution, while crude, did prevent catastrophic failure, Pelax admitted reluctantly. However, Union protocols exist for good reason. In my experience, Tommy replied, sometimes the book solution takes too long when things are exploding. By the end of the 3-day orientation, Tommy had accumulated the minimum qualifying score for provisional service, by a margin so narrow it required 3 decimal places to express. Commander Zevra seemed amused rather than concerned by this result, when Tommy reported to the Stellar Horizons docking bay. The Union values diversity of approach, Human Cooper, the commander said, leading Tommy up the boarding ramp of what appeared to be a sleek, elongated vessel with multiple propulsion systems extending from its aft section. Exploration often requires unconventional thinking. In that case, you got the right human, Tommy assured him. Conventional thinking was never my strong suit. The interior of the Stellar Horizon was a marvel of engineering. Corridors curved organically, lighting adjusted automatically to the visual preferences of whoever walked beneath it, and every surface seemed to serve multiple functions. The crew, representing 12 different species, worked with the synchronized precision of a well-rehearsed orchestra. Your duties will begin in the communications division given your prior experience, Commander Zevra explained as they moved through the ship. Lieutenant Thalex will be your direct supervisor. Lieutenant Thalex turned out to be a Folix, a species with 4 arms, iridescent skin, and what appeared to be gills pulsing gently at the base of their neck. They greeted Tommy with a complex gesture that the neural translator identified as respectful acknowledgement of a new colleague. Despite uncertain qualifications, the commander informs me you have experience with primitive communication systems, Thalex said, their voice producing multiple tones simultaneously. While our technology is considerably more advanced, the fundamental principles may have similarities. Tommy took in the communications bay with its holographic interfaces, quantum entanglement transmitters, and what appeared to be some form of organic computing nodes. Yeah, this is a bit different from what I'm used to. Our most advanced tech was digital radio and satellite relays. Thalex's gill-like structures pulsated in what Tommy would later learn indicated patient tolerance. We will begin with basic operations. Observe. The lieutenant's 4 hands moved in a complex dance across various interfaces, causing the systems to respond with bursts of light, harmonic tones, and shifting holographic displays. Tommy tried to follow the process, but it was like watching someone perform brain surgery while juggling. Now you attempt the sequence, Thalex instructed, stepping aside. Tommy approached the console hesitantly. I should mention I only have 2 hands? Yes, an unfortunate limitation, Thalex acknowledged. You may need to develop sequential rather than simultaneous input techniques. Over the next several hours, Tommy struggled to grasp even the most fundamental aspects of Union communications technology. Everything from the interface logic to the transmission principles seemed designed for beings with different cognitive structures and physical capabilities. By the end of his first shift, he had managed to send exactly 1 test message to the wrong destination in a format that apparently translated as mildly offensive in 3 different languages. Your performance requires significant improvement, Thalex stated, their tones conveying what the translator rendered as professional disappointment tinged with personal fascination. However, your persistence despite repeated failure is noteworthy. Thanks, I think, Tommy replied, rubbing his sore fingers. I'll get better. Just need time to adjust. Commander Zevra, who had been observing the training session, approached. Adaptability goes both ways, Lieutenant. Perhaps our systems could be modified to better accommodate Human Cooper's capabilities. That would violate Union standardization protocols, Thalex objected. The Exploration Corps operates under modified protocols, the commander reminded them. We adapt to the unknown. That includes adapting to our own crew when necessary. Tommy appreciated the commander's intervention, though he wasn't entirely sure it was deserved. He hadn't exactly distinguished himself so far. "I'll work with whatever you give me," he assured them both. "I'm a quick learner when I'm motivated, and trust me, I'm plenty motivated to not be the most useless crew member in galactic history." The commander's whiskers twitched in what Tommy was beginning to recognize as amusement. "Your attitude is commendable, Human Cooper. Report to medical for your final implant calibrations, then rest. We depart for the Cygnus Rift at next cycle." As Tommy made his way to the medical bay, he couldn't help but marvel at his situation. Less than a week ago, subjectively speaking, he had been a middling communications specialist on a dying world's last military outpost. Now he was on an advanced alien vessel, preparing to explore regions of space humanity had only dreamed. About the ship's medical officer, Dr. Solara, was a Thalasian, a species that appeared almost human except for their silvery skin and the fact that they had no visible eyes, only a series of sensory ridges where eyes would be on a human. "Your neural interface requires final adjustment," Dr. Solara explained, gesturing for Tommy to sit on an examination platform that hovered slightly above the floor. "The translator has been functioning adequately, but we need to fine-tune the sensory filters and cultural context modules." Tommy winced as he sat down. "Will this hurt?" The initial installation wasn't exactly comfortable. "Pain is subjective and largely irrelevant," the doctor replied matter-of-factly. "However, discomfort should be minimal with proper calibration." "That's not as reassuring as you probably think it is," Tommy muttered. The doctor placed a device against Tommy's temple, and immediately his perception shifted. Colors intensified, sounds separated into distinct layers, and even his sense of time seemed to alter slightly. "Whoa," he gasped, gripping the edges of the platform. "That's intense. Your brain is now receiving enhanced sensory data and contextual information," Dr. Solara explained. "This will facilitate your integration with both the crew and the environments we encounter. The effect will normalize as your neural pathways adapt." Tommy blinked rapidly, trying to process the flood of new information. He could now perceive subtle variations in the light that hinted at spectrums beyond human vision. The background hum of the ship's systems resolved into distinct operational signatures. Even Dr. Solara appeared different. He could now detect patterns of heat and electrical activity beneath their silvery skin. "This is how you all see the world?" he asked, amazed. "Each species perceives reality differently," the doctor replied. "The interface approximates a common perceptual framework while preserving your natural cognitive structures. Full integration would require more extensive modifications than would be ethical without explicit consent and necessity." As Tommy left the medical bay, his enhanced perception made navigating the ship both easier and more disorienting. He could now intuitively understand the purpose of previously mysterious fixtures and controls. Environmental indicators that had been invisible to him now provided clear information about everything from atmospheric composition to gravity field strength. By the time he reached his assigned quarters, he had already begun adapting to the new input. The room, designed to accommodate various physiologies, now seemed less alien and more functional. He recognized sleep surfaces optimized for his body type, environmental controls that could be adjusted to Earth-normal conditions, and even a nutrition dispenser programmed with approximations of human-compatible food. As the departure cycle approached, Tommy reported to his station in the communications bay, feeling marginally more confident than the day before. Lieutenant Thalex was already there, along with two other communications specialists, a crystalline entity named Crix and a gaseous being contained in an articulated support frame who introduced themselves as Vox. Pre-departure protocols initiated. Thalex announced, "Human Cooper, monitor the tertiary frequency bands for navigational beacons. Alert me to any anomalies." Thanks to his newly calibrated neural interface, Tommy could now identify the relevant systems without assistance. The holographic controls responded more intuitively to his touch, and the data streams displayed in formats his brain could process more naturally. Beacons locked and tracking. he reported after a few moments of concentration. All signals nominal. He paused, noticing something unusual. Wait, there's a fluctuation in Beacon 7. Pattern seems irregular. Thelex moved swiftly to Tommy's station, all four hands working controls to enhance the signal. Correct identification, Human Cooper. Beacon 7 is experiencing synchronization drift, compensating now. Tommy felt a small surge of pride. It wasn't much, but it was his first genuine contribution to the ship's operations. The departure proceeded smoothly after that. The stellar horizon detached from Centaurus Prime's orbital dock with barely a tremor, its inertial dampeners negating any sense of motion. Only the changing vista through the viewports indicated they were moving at all. Once clear of the planetary system, the ship's main drive engaged. There was no dramatic acceleration, no pressing force, just a subtle shift in the background, hum of the ship's systems, and suddenly the stars outside began to streak and blur. Transitioning to subspace in 3, 2, 1, announced the navigation officer. The streaking stars twisted, folded, and then resolved into an entirely different pattern as the ship entered what the Union called subspace, a dimensional layer that allowed for faster-than-light travel. Journey to the Cygnus Rift estimated at 17 cycles, Commander Zevra informed the crew. Standard exploration protocols apply. Department heads will brief their teams on mission parameters during the transit. For Tommy, the following days became a crash course in galactic civilization, Union technology, and his role aboard the Stellar Horizon. Lieutenant Thelex proved to be a demanding but fair supervisor, gradually assigning Tommy more complex tasks. As his proficiency improved, he also began to form connections with his fellow crew members. Despite their physiological differences, many shared a curiosity about humans that Tommy was happy to satisfy, though he often had to explain that his knowledge of human history and culture was limited to what any average person from his time would know. "So your species had no unified government?" asked Ensign Vrel, a maintenance technician whose body resembled an arrangement of geometric shapes connected by force fields. "How did you make collective decisions?" "We didn't really," Tommy explained as they shared a meal in the ship's common area. "We had countries, each with their own governments and interests. They sometimes worked together, sometimes fought each other." "That seems incredibly inefficient," Vrel observed, absorbing nutrients through a process that looked to Tommy like geometric reshuffling. "Oh, it was," Tommy agreed. "Probably why we ended up blowing ourselves up in the end." Conversations like these were common, with Tommy serving as an impromptu ambassador for a civilization that no longer existed. He found himself defending humanity's achievements while acknowledging its failures, a complex position that gave him a new perspective on his own species. By the time the stellar horizon approached the Cygnus Rift, a vast, unexplored region of space where conventional sensors were known to malfunction, Tommy had settled into a rhythm aboard the ship. His duties in communications had expanded to include monitoring subspace frequencies for any signs of intelligent transmissions from the uncharted region. "We are detecting unusual energy signatures at the boundary of the rift," reported Science Officer Zyla, a being composed of what appeared to be living metal. "Pattern suggests artificial origin rather than natural phenomenon." Commander Zevra's ears swiveled forward with interest. "Possible evidence of civilization?" "Inconclusive," Zyla replied. "The signals are degraded by the rift's unique properties. We need to move closer for better analysis." As the stellar horizon cautiously approached the boundary of the Cygnus Rift, Tommy's console began registering unusual activity across multiple frequency bands. "Lieutenant," he called to Thelex, "I'm picking up something weird here. It's not just random noise. There's a pattern, but it doesn't match any Union communication protocols." Thelex joined him, examining the signal patterns. "Interesting. The structure suggests a communication system, but the encoding is unlike anything in our database." Tommy studied the patterns more closely. Something about them seemed vaguely familiar, though he couldn't immediately place why. "Can we isolate the base frequency and clean up the signal?" Working together, they managed to extract a clearer version of the mysterious transmission. As the pattern became more distinct, Tommy felt a shock of recognition. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I know what this is." All four of Thelex's hands paused over the controls. "Explain." "It's Morse code," Tommy said, hardly believing it himself. "An old Earth communication system using patterns of short and long signals. It was outdated even in my time, mostly used by amateur radio operators and for emergencies." Commander Zevra, who had approached upon hearing their discussion, looked skeptical. "You believe we are detecting human transmissions? From within the Cygnus Rift?" "I'm not saying it's definitely human," Tommy clarified, "but the pattern is identical to Morse code, and if I'm reading it right, it's repeating the same message over and over." "What does it say?" the commander asked. Tommy listened to the pattern of pulses, mentally translating the dots and dashes. "It says, Mayday Research Station Echo. 7 coordinates follow. Then there's a series of numbers that must be the coordinates." A tense silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. Either they had discovered another human outpost that had somehow survived Earth's destruction, or they had encountered an alien civilization that had adopted human communication methods for unknown reasons. Neither possibility had been anticipated in their mission parameters. Commander Zevra didn't hesitate long. Navigation. Set course for the coordinates embedded in the transmission. Communications. Prepare a response using the same encoding system. Science. Full sensor sweep of the target location. Tommy worked with Thelex to craft a simple response. Message received. Union vessel Stellar Horizon responding. ETA 12 hours. As they sent the message, Tommy couldn't help but wonder what they might find. Another human survivor? A lost colony? Or something else entirely? Something that had learned to communicate in a dead Earth language for purposes he couldn't begin to guess? Whatever awaited them in the Cygnus Rift, Tommy Cooper, the last human soldier and reluctant ambassador of his species, would soon face yet another unexpected chapter in his increasingly improbable journey through the stars. The approach to the coordinates was conducted with maximum caution. The Stellar Horizon's defensive systems were activated, and the crew was placed on alert status. As they penetrated deeper into the Cygnus Rift, sensor reliability decreased sharply, creating a disorienting effect that the navigation team struggled to compensate for. "Spatial distortions intensifying," reported the helm officer, a Navari whose multiple appendages worked furiously across the control interfaces. "Maintaining course, but precision is degrading." Tommy, monitoring communications with heightened attention, detected a change in the mysterious transmission. "The signal's getting stronger, but it's changing, breaking up into what sounds like actual voice communications, heavily distorted." Commander Zevra moved to Tommy's station. "Can you clean it up enough to understand it?" "Working on it," Tommy replied, his fingers dancing across the controls with newfound proficiency. "There's something about the distortion pattern that seems familiar." After several minutes of adjustments, a crackling voice emerged from the speakers, speaking English to the astonishment of everyone on the bridge. "Repeat, this is Research Station Echo 7. Our situation is critical. If anyone receives this message, please respond. We are..." The transmission dissolved into static before returning. "Unknown phenomena causing severe..." More static. Not much time left. Tommy felt a chill run down his spine. The voice was human, or an incredibly good simulation. "Commander, I need to respond directly." Zevra nodded. "Proceed, but exercise caution. We don't know what we're dealing with." Tommy activated the communication channel. "Research Station Echo 7. This is Tommy Cooper aboard the Galactic Union vessel Stellar Horizon. We've received your distress call and are approaching your coordinates. Please identify yourself and the nature of your emergency." For several tense moments there was no response beyond continued fragments of the original distress call. Then suddenly the channel cleared. "Cooper? Did you say Tommy Cooper?" The voice sounded shocked. That's impossible. Tommy Cooper was stationed at Lunar Base Epsilon over 2 centuries ago." Tommy's heart raced. "That's correct. I was in cryosleep until discovered by an alien mining vessel. Who am I speaking with? This is Dr. Eliza Chen, chief researcher at Echo 7, the voice replied, still sounding disbelieving. We're a deep space research outpost established by the final Exodus ships before Earth's destruction. How did you find us? Your Morse code distress signal, Tommy explained. I recognize the pattern. We're about an hour from your coordinates now. What's your situation? Dr. Chen's voice grew urgent. We're experiencing catastrophic system failures across the station. Something in this region of space is interfering with our technology, creating increasingly dangerous malfunctions. We've lost 3 sections already, and life support is failing in what remains. We have 27 survivors requiring immediate evacuation. Commander Zevra, who had been listening to the translated conversation, immediately issued orders. Medical, prepare for emergency reception of 27 individuals with human physiology. Security, establish containment protocols as a precaution. Science, intensify scans for the interference phenomenon. As the stellar horizon continued its approach, the sensor team finally managed to obtain visual confirmation of Research Station Echo 7. The structure appeared to be cobbled together from multiple spacecraft components, forming an irregular habitat that was clearly suffering from extensive damage. Several sections were exposed to space, and power fluctuations were visible throughout the remaining modules. Life signs confirmed, announced Science Officer Zyla. 27 biological signatures consistent with human Cooper's physiology, also detecting unusual energy patterns throughout the station that appear to be the source of the interference. The rescue operation was complex and dangerous. The stellar horizon couldn't dock directly with the damaged station due to the spatial distortions, so shuttlecraft were deployed instead. Tommy volunteered to join the rescue team, arguing that his presence would help reassure the human survivors. Your assistance may indeed prove valuable, Commander Zevra agreed. But you will follow Security Chief Krell's orders without question. Your safety remains a priority. The shuttle journey to Echo 7 was turbulent, buffeted by invisible currents in the fabric of space itself. As they approached the station's remaining functional airlock, Tommy got his first clear view of what might be the last human outpost in the galaxy. It was a testament to human ingenuity and desperation, a structure that had no right to function, yet somehow had sustained life for generations in this hostile region of space. Security Chief Krell, a hulking draconian whose armored exoskeleton made him look like a walking weapon, addressed the rescue team. We extract the survivors quickly and efficiently. No detours, no delays. The station's structural integrity is failing rapidly. The airlock cycle seemed to take an eternity. When the inner door finally opened, Tommy found himself face to face with the first humans he had seen since awakening from cryosleep. They stared at him and his alien companions with expressions ranging from terror to desperate hope. A small woman with gray-streaked black hair stepped forward. I'm Dr. Chen. You must be Cooper. Her eyes widened as she took in his appearance. You look exactly like the historical records. And you look like actual living humans, Tommy replied, his voice thick with emotion. We thought I might be the last one. Dr. Chen shook her head. There were 12 Exodus ships that escaped Earth before the final exchange. Echo 7 was established as a research outpost to study the unusual properties of this region. We lost contact with the other colonies decades ago. There was no time for extended explanations. The station shuddered ominously, and warning alarms blared from multiple systems. We need to move now, Security Chief Krell ordered. The station is becoming unstable. The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency, considering the circumstances. The human survivors, weakened by their ordeal but driven by survival instinct, followed instructions quickly. Many stared in wonder at their alien rescuers, having never encountered non-human intelligence before. As the last group prepared to board the shuttle, Dr. Chen pulled Tommy aside. There's something you need to see before we leave, something that might explain what's happening here. Chief Krell overheard and moved to block their path. Negative. All personnel evacuate immediately. Please, Dr. Chen insisted. It's in the next module. It will only take a minute. and it could be crucial information for your scientists. Tommy looked between the determined human researcher and the implacable security chief. 30 seconds, he proposed. In and out. This could be important, Chief. After a moment of consideration, Krell reluctantly agreed. 30 seconds, not one more. Dr. Chen led them to a sealed laboratory door, her hands shaking slightly as she input the access code. We discovered it 3 years ago, floating in the Rift. At first we thought it was just an unusual asteroid, but then we realized it was artificial and ancient. The laboratory beyond the door contained a single pedestal in the center, upon which rested an object that defied easy description. It appeared to be a crystalline structure about the size of a basketball, with an internal architecture of impossible complexity. Tendrils of energy pulsed within it in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost like it's communicating, Tommy realized, staring at the object. Those energy patterns, they're like the distortions affecting the station, but more organized. Dr. Chen nodded rapidly. Yes. We think it's some kind of technology so advanced it operates on principles we can barely detect, let alone understand. When we brought it aboard,